Members, good afternoon. This is the panel on commerce, industry, and innovation and technology. Let's make a start. Item 1, information paper issued since the last meeting. The Secretariat hasn't issued any paper. Second item, establishment of the Hong Kong Microelectronics Research and Development Institute. Let's invite the administration to come in. Members, if you want to ask questions, please press the request to speak button now.
好，首先歡迎政府當局嘅代表出席。
Let me welcome the administration to our meeting. 好，局長，如果準 Secretary, when you're ready. Thank you, Chairman. Members, good afternoon. I am very happy to be joined by my team in this meeting of the panel on commerce, industry, innovation, and technology to brief members on this important proposal of the establishment of the Hong Kong Microelectronics R&D Institute. We published the Hong Kong I&T Development Blueprint in December 2022 to set out the 4 broad development directions and 8 major strategies, such as to enhance the I&T ecosystem, including support for the development of strategic industries such as the semiconductor industry. The Chief Executive announced in 2023 policy address the establishment of the Hong Kong Microelectronics R&D Institute, or MRDI, so that we can facilitate collaboration among universities, R&D centers, and the industry to leveraging on the well-developed manufacturing industry chains and the enormous market in the Greater Bay Area. Semiconductor is an essential part of the ecosystem. That is why we can contribute to the country's development and bolster our status as a Hong Kong International I&T Center. To create a new, or to turn over a new chapter, we can be one of the advanced economies in taking forward the development of semiconductors in the APAC region. We'll provide a common platform for collaboration among the government, the industry, and R&D centers so as to expedite the one-to-end transformation for the commercialization of R&D results and meet the demands in the Greater Bay Area and enhance the I&T ecosystem. This facility will be set up in the Inno Park in Yuen Long so that we can involve the SMEs and startups. We'll also collaborate with the universities and R&D institutions so as to set up multiple partnerships and create synergy. The MRDI will mostly be supporting the development of third-generation semiconductors, including the silicon carbide, etc., so as to support the development of new energy vehicles as well as other consumer electronic products, etc. The government will set up subsidiary company wholly owned or limited company wholly owned by the government to help with the operation of the MRDI. There will be 200 staff engaged, including 30 management and support staff and a small core administration team. We will abide by the principles of meritocracy and openness in appointing suitable staff. As for finance and budget, $2.48 billion will be earmarked for procuring the pilot lines equipment and about $360 million for the operating expenditure for the first 5 years. Similar to the 5 R&D centers, similar funding mechanisms will be set up, and the MRDI will seek funding support from the ITF accordingly. We will also set key performance indicators, and a rigorous assessment mechanism will be established as well. Every year, we will report to the panel on the progress of all the R&D centers. We are well positioned to in the Greater Bay Area so as to complete the manufacturing and R&D industry chains in the Greater Bay Area. This also shows the government's commitment taking forward new industrialization and commercialization of R&D outcomes so as to enhance our competitiveness. We welcome views and comments from members. We will continue to communicate with all the stakeholders to refine the implementation details. We will also seek funding approval from the Finance Committee in due course with a view to setting up the MRDI in 2024. Thank you. Let me remind members, first of all, that if there is any direct or indirect pecuniary interest involved, please disclose the nature of the interest before you speak in relation to Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure. And please also note the voting requirements where direct pecuniary interests are involved. Under Rule 84 of the ROP, we have 9 members waiting to speak. I'll give each member 4 minutes, questions and answers included. Please limit to just 2 questions. If you have other questions, please let's wait for another round. Dr. Johnny Ng will kick us off. Dr. Johnny Ng, Dennis Leung, Edmund Wong, Martin Liao, Ms. Adrian Ho, Ma Fong Kwok, Robert Lee, Dr. Tan Yue Heng, and Professor William Wong. These are the members on the list. We'll start with Dr. Johnny Ng. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I support the establishment of the Microelectronics Research and Development Institute, MRDI. It will be for the long-term good for Hong Kong. I have a number of questions. Paragraph 14, page 5 of the page 6 of the papers suggests that for the prospects of the microelectronics industry, there is less restrictions in terms of prospects. Are you referring to photovoltaic inverters? Is it that we won't be subject to any sanctions by Western countries? As for the semiconductor industry, it is essential that we have sufficient manpower support. Around the world, there are a lot of scientists, but we don't have sufficient engineers. Now, if there aren't sufficient engineers in Hong Kong, it is impossible to complete this high-value industry chain. Now, after setting up the MRDI, will there be collaboration with the major institutions in the mainland, such as the SMIC and the YMTC, so that we can help complete this industry chain in Hong Kong? About the third generation semiconductor, Professor Chan is the expert, so I will give him the floor before I take the rest of the questions. Is the mic on? About possible embargo of the materials concerned. Well, for the third generation semiconductors, there is a rather high energy requirement, and the lines are we need high flow of electric currents, so we need wires of a thicker diameter. So that's to take the first question. Right, thank you, Professor Chan. Let me supplement in relation to the third generation semiconductor. More and more semiconductors are produced on the mainland. We are confident that in the future we will not be facing as many headwinds as we have externally. Now, on talents, we have research talents at tertiary institutions such as Professor Chan. He is an expert in semiconductor. We also have high R&D capability in Hong Kong as well. But in terms of industry support, there is not sufficient manpower support. Hence, we didn't do well in terms of applying the R&D outcomes. Now, the MRDI will be set up so that we will be able to attract more experts from overseas and from the mainland to take part in the R&D work. Next, Mr. Dennis Leung. Chairman, technology is our way forward in order to complete the mission handed down by our motherland. About this MRDI, it will become a common platform for the transformation of R&D and commercialization of R&D outcomes. Now, my question is that they will apply for funding of $2.48 billion. First of all, there is little detail on how the funds will be used and about the variety of products mentioned. Because of the large number involved, will there be any fundraising activity in the private sector? Finally, now if the product is launched the market, if a profit is made, is it possible to benefit everybody in Hong Kong so as to instill in them a sense of gain and happiness? More importantly, can we leverage on this platform to bring economic impetus to Hong Kong? Like President Xi said, we need to create a bigger pie. But my question is whether everybody can get a share of that pie. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Leung, for the question. We need to take forward I&T development, especially under the industry-led approach proposed by the government. We need to focus on I&T development, especially the third generation semiconductors. That means we need to set up a core platform. This core platform will be provided by the MRDI. In other countries, such as Belgium, it has a very renowned R&D semiconductor institute. Through decades of development, the institute has made a lot of profits and supported a lot of semiconductor companies. That likewise, in Singapore, Taiwan, they have similar institutes. Since we are taking forward semiconductor development in Hong Kong, we need to create a platform. The function of the MRDI is to build connections between universities, R&D institutes, and the industry. It is different from a pure R&D angle we took before. For the MRDI in the future, 2 pilot lines will be built. One is for silicon carbide and the other is gallium nitride. So that in the future, they can have prototype testing in Hong Kong. If the products are market ready, we can help attract more startups and other companies to gather in Hong Kong and to form a cluster. Now, this is what we hope to achieve in the near future, and that the MRDI could be as successful as that institute in Belgium. Next, Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I support this funding application. In order to take forward high-quality economic development in Hong Kong, we need to devote more resources to support I&T development so as to build Hong Kong into an international I&T center. I have some questions about setting up pilot lines in paragraph 15. It is an essential part of the industry chain. For those with a concept, before they are allowed to take forward mass production, they can first set up pilot lines to test run the idea. Why is it that we did not set up pilot lines before? Why did the government not set up pilot lines before? In the future, will we be requiring more pilot lines to be set up? Also, on manpower, you talked about 200 staff members to be recruited, including 170 research staff and 30 management staff. Do we have a pool of research talents available in Hong Kong? If not, can we recruit from tertiary institutions and R&D institutions overseas and the mainland, including the postgraduates? How many of the institutions are we in connection with?
Thank you. I thank the member for his question. First, why weren't there pilot lines in the past? It had to do with our innovation policy. We focus on the upstream research. The midstream and downstreams were not part of our focus in the past. Over the past few years, we've seen changes in policy. There's more focus on the industry side of things, especially for the current term government, the focus is on industries. But land is at a premium. We cannot cover everything or scale up everything. So we have to build on our strength in breakthrough out of the blue. And here, pilot lines matter. Pilot lines are there to validate the outcomes from upstream research. Pilot lines can also contribute to our economy. The mass production can happen in the mainland. So in Hong Kong, we focus on pilot production, and there will be more such production. Now, for the current investment, we're talking about $2.4 billion. They are for third-generation semiconductors. We focus on the core equipment. We don't have to buy new equipment every year. Now, on the other aspect, I invite my colleague, Mr. Ivan Lee, Commissioner for Innovation and Technology, who will comment on talent. As the member noted, talent will be crucial for the future MRDI. The establishment we have in mind is 170 research personnel. Hong Kong's universities offer programs in computer science, electrical and electronic engineering. These universities offer leading programs in the world. We lacked an MRDI in the past, so this kind of talent went to the mainland or overseas. We're confident that with the MRDI, we can attract such talent to come back. That way, we will have enough talent to support the running of the MRDI. Thank you. Mr. Martin Liao. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the government's proposal about the MRDI. This is about working closely with the industry and also setting up 2 pilot lines to meet the needs of the industry. I also agree that we should focus on third-generation semiconductors. This year, we had the first third-generation semiconductor firm come to Hong Kong. This shows firms are upbeat about Hong Kong's future. Now, we have third-generation semiconductors made in China. We don't have to over-rely on mask aligners from overseas. Still, Hong Kong's equipment belongs to outdated models. So my question is, what will the government do about our backward and shortage of equipment? And how can we attract more such firms here? And given the export restrictions on semiconductors, will the government look at making our own semiconductor facilities so that we make our own semiconductors to contribute to our country? I thank Mr. Martin Liao for his key questions. I want to invite Professor Chen to comment. For the MRDI, we have plans to work with the mainland manufacturers so that the manufacturing devices, equipment can be put at the MRDI. There will be pilot production. The makers are willing to put the equipment at the future MRDI. They can export their product via Hong Kong, so that's one direction. The makers are willing to do this. Thank you, Professor Chen. We work with finite resources, so the future MRDI will focus on the components of the third-generation conductors. But Hong Kong cannot make everything, so we have to rely on our country. There are many makers of equipment about third-generation semiconductors. There are mainland makers in talks with us about exporting their products via Hong Kong. Developing semiconductors will take the effort of more than just Hong Kong. For us in Hong Kong, we need to leverage our unique strength, that is our talent, technology, our robust research and development. For gallium nitride semiconductors, they are the leading technology. We don't see mass production yet. We are just a few years behind other countries. So here we want to focus on our strength and seek breakthrough on this front. Chairman, can I ask a follow-up question? For semiconductors, there is design, manufacturing, packaging, storage, management. You need different kinds of talent for different tasks. So my question is, what's the situation like for our talent? There is fierce global talent. How can we attract outside talent and retain local talent? Professor Chen will take this question. The government's talent admission schemes help. We talk to the makers and firms. Hong Kong's talent admission schemes can help bring in global talent. And second, Hong Kong lacks this industry. But over the years, we have many graduates. These graduates have built up experience elsewhere, such as in Taiwan. We want to bring some of the graduates from Hong Kong to come back here so that they can contribute to Hong Kong. Now, the development of semiconductors, it's a wide-ranging issue. The MRDI will be the first step. We first want to pool our research resources. This is where we have an edge, and then we attract overseas resources. We also have to get the industry involved. We're trying to bring in strategic firms to work on semiconductors. Now we do have a number of cases like Black Sesame, etc., along with other firms. Some firms came here for a visit, along with the firms who want them to help bring in more talent. For the MRDI, we want this institute to help us bring together industries and have an industry here. The government needs to work together with the industry. Mr. Adrian Ho. I support the proposal about the MRDI to support research and other aspects about third-generation semiconductors. A question for the Secretary about assessment and key performance indicators. Can the Secretary share any figures, indicators with us? The paper mentions the vision of the MRDI, research, transformation, commercialization, and helping the industry upgrade and transform. Will the MRDI set KPIs about turning Hong Kong into a smart city and improving people's lives? Contribution from the MRDI in smart city development will bring benefits that people can feel. Mr. Ivan Lee will take the question on KPIs for the MRDI. We have looked at the experience from other publicly run research institutes. Our KPIs will include R&D projects, platform projects, collaborations with the industry. And also income generated from collaborations with the industry, because that income will reflect whether the work of the MRDI is recognized by the industry, and also patents granted and applied for. As we get closer to the establishment of MRDI, we will have more concrete indicators. Now, on serving the public, last year the government released the Hong Kong Innovation and Technology Development Blueprint. There were 4 directions. 2 of them are upstream, midstream, and downstream developments coming together for new industrialization. And the other one is digital economy in Hong Kong's development. Mr. Ho's question has to do with new industrialization. But I believe the MLDI will also help drive the smart city development. With artificial intelligence, we need chips to drive AI development. So it all comes back to chips. We want to grow Hong Kong's economy to deliver for Hong Kong's people. And then we can achieve high quality development, create more jobs, and provide new growth points for Hong Kong's GDP. In the end, everyone in Hong Kong will benefit and contribute to our country. Thank you. Mr. Ma Fung Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of a direction, I support the proposal in the paper. Shortly after 1997, I proposed an idea, but sadly that wasn't adopted by the government. Many years later, we are back. We're looking at this idea again. There are similar facilities in the mainland. The paper says we need more than $2 billion. But for the medium term, is that amount enough? Some years ago, the mainland proposed going all out on this industry. That took the mainland more than $100 billion. The secretary told us we need to focus on upstream, midstream, and downstream industries. This one is more about the midstream development. We have universities for sure, but given our land constraints, we will be hard-pressed to pursue downstream development, and we need to constantly update our facilities. So what will the future hold? Are we putting in enough money? When will we have to put more money to buy new equipment, and what will we do about the land needed? Now, about the mainland's development, Professor Chen can tell us more. In the mainland, there are different research bodies. Some of them have a similar positioning to the future MLDI. I've talked to them. We want to work together. The pie is big enough. We need to work with the mainland. As a next step, we can also consider working with Southeast Asia and the other parts of the world so that we can achieve the synergy of 1 + 1 being bigger than 2. For downstream sectors, there are several firms in Science Park. We are in talks with them. We see many possibilities for collaboration. There are startups in the Science Park, then there are also larger players. We can work with both upstream and downstream players. The MLDI belongs to the midstream, so we can work with both downstream players where there are firms that can use some help with upgrading and transformation. Our country has larger research institutes. They also have a large pool of talent. Our country's research bodies have many years of experience. We can work with the mainland.
All right, just to pick up on that, we now have an MEC. We have that already. How do we build on the existing bases, the Microelectronics Center? Are we going to expand it, or are we going to separate the MEC from the new establishments? Let me clarify. For the MEC, that's one of the R&D centers. It involves some equipment for physics. We need a building that's a facility for the study of physics. As for the MRDI, it is a concept of having a pool of talents to run this institution. So we have 2 pilot lines in this MRDI. Will they be housed together? Yes. Next, Mr. Robert Lee. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to speak on finance and budget as well as competitiveness. Some members asked about the estimated expenditure. The total funding to be applied for is $2.48 billion, including the procurement of pilot lines, as well as $360 million for the operating expenditure for the first 5 years of operation. Now, other countries are also making preparations for that. Last year, the U.S. enacted the 2022 chips and the acts relating to semiconductor chips. Funding was also approved for this purpose. So in relation to the other countries' positioning, do they affect our competitiveness? As for the financial aspect, is there a goal for the MRDI to be financially independent? Will there be collaboration, such as fundraising? So 2 questions. Secretary, I thank the member for the questions. About the positioning, I think this is set out clearly in the paper. We want to be one of the leading institutions in to support the development of semiconductor in APAC region. The successful example is Belgium, Inter-University Microelectronics Center, IMEC, as well as other R&D institutions in Singapore, Japan, Taiwan, etc. As mentioned by Professor Chan, we see great potential in the semiconductor industry. And around the world, there has yet to be a place with mass production of semiconductor. So we are having a very keen competition. So our development direction would be of essence. Mr. Ma Fong Kwok asked about funding for the institute, whether it's sufficient. Some $2 billion were approved for the MEC. So now the building is ready. We have the hardware. Now, for this round, we will apply for funding for the procurement of pilot lines and other equipment. There will also be funding for the operating expenditure for the first few years. It doesn't mean that we'll stop at that. Basically, there will be funding applications for R&D projects. The objective is to form a cluster of research and development in Hong Kong, and the MRDI's objective is to support the development of the industries. For decades, we have not taken forward the development of advanced manufacturing. Wafer manufacturing, well, this is unprecedented. We are taking the first step, and we are ironing out details with the enterprises concerned. We need to overcome various obstacles such as land funding and other policy obstacles, collaboration with the mainland, support for enterprises. And yesterday, I talked to the financial secretary. Regardless of the hurdles we need to go through, we need to soldier on. some time ago when some years ago, SMIC was forced to leave Hong Kong for Shanghai, and this is happening again. That is why this government is determined to go ahead with it. We will strive to overcome hurdles. Dr. Han Tan Yueheng. Promoting the development of microelectronics and semiconductor industry in Hong Kong, supporting the industry chain. I support that as well. I support the MRDI. I have a number of questions. About location. The Secretary mentioned combining research talent and the physical location. Combining these two, the institute will be set up in Inno Park in Yuen Long, so as to facilitate collaboration with universities, R&D institutes, and the industry. So I want to know whether the position or the location of this institute will be such that collaboration can be fostered so as to create synergy by forming a cluster to enhance the I&T ecosystem. Next question, implementation timetable in the last paragraph. We're having this meeting today, and then the second quarter of 2024, you will seek funding approval from the Finance Committee, and then pilot line equipment all the way to the third quarter of 2025. Now, there are several steps to go through, such as setting up an office, preparing tender documents, etc. Secretary, is it possible to further compress this timetable? Can we advance the target completion date by 6 months, especially for installation of pilot lines, since we want to enhance speed as well? Is it possible to speed things up? Secretary, I thank Dr. Tan for the questions about the location. We have a number of constraints. The Yuen Long Inno Park is one of the 3 Inno Parks under the Hong Kong STP. Yuen Long Inno Park is positioned to take forward the microelectronics development, and there is space to support industry development as well. That is the reason for choosing Yuen Long Inno Park. It would be better, of course, to set up this institute right next to a university. We have 8 universities in Hong Kong, but we are short of space. If we place the institute next to University A, then other universities may be disappointed. We find Yuen Long Inno Park the most suitable location. Now, in the longer term, in the Loop area, there will be a platform built for I&T collaboration. On timetable, I strongly agree with Dr. Tan. We want to expedite the progress as well. We have Professor Chan, a team leader, as well as the commissioner here. We'll try to compress the timetable as much as we can. Professor William Wong. I have a question on the I&T ecosystem, including the upstream, midstream, and downstream. For upstream, universities have a pivotal role to play. The Hong Kong UST, Chinese University, they will set up branch campuses in the Loop area. We should leverage on these institutions. Is there any plan in this regard? About the midstream, in the past 2 decades or so, we have invested in applied institutes, especially the Hong Kong ASTRI. It specializes in microelectronics as well. I'd like to know the delineation of responsibilities. ASTRI is not undertaking the 3G solid state ASTRI means Hong Kong Applied Science and Technology Research Institute. The third question is downstream. This project will bring about a paradigm shift because our goal is to set up a platform. So it's a platform-driven research. Still, we need the downstream support. In other words, what chipset, what components should be manufactured. It should be application-driven. I'd like to know the government's plan, please. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for the questions. About the branch campuses of universities in Hong Kong, in the Greater Bay Area, the MRDI is an open platform. Be it universities in Hong Kong, the branches in the Greater Bay Area, or other institutions, we provide this open platform for research and development. And we also foster collaboration with our sister cities. As for midstream and ASTRI, a commissioner can take the question in a moment. On downstream, this is very crucial. The establishment of the MRDI can help support the development of the downstream sectors so that they form a cluster in Hong Kong. For upstream and midstream, there can be a transformation or production on the mainland side. For the downstream sector, I'm not too worried. Having regard to the future development trend of semiconductors and mainland as the vast market, we are closely connected with the mainland. We should also leverage on our advantages to serve the country's needs. Commissioner can take the other question. Indeed, the Hong Kong ASTRI has a team specializing in the development of integrated circuits, energy saving, etc. And again, you're right on this. The ASTRI does not take part in the R&D of core technologies. The ASTRI does not have a pilot line either. We believe that a more specialized institute should be set up. As for delineation of work, we will be discussing with ASTRI for talent relating to the research and development of semiconductors. They may be redeployed to the MRDI. The ITC will be monitoring the running of these two facilities to make sure that they complement each other so that there won't be overlapping of duties. Professor Wong, whilst I agree with the Secretary, I want to stress that since this is a platform, we need to take a more focused approach in developing the downstream sector. Say, for manufacturing of vehicles, we need to manufacture different chipsets, etc., to support that industry in particular. Please take note of that. Well, yes, understood. Mr. Peter Shiu. I support the establishment of the Hong Kong MRDI. In terms of I&T in Hong Kong, we are lagging so much behind. We need to catch up quickly. On talent, I think other members already covered this ground. And I hope that, like Professor Chan and the Secretary said, you will be able to attract talents from other institutions. Paragraph 21 about finance and budget. $2.48 billion will be set aside for procuring pilot lines, equipment, and $360 million for operating expenditure such as remuneration, etc. That means with total commitment of about $2.84 billion, what is the estimated return? In paragraph 25, implementation timetable. After funding approval has been sought in the second quarter of 2024, an office will be set up in the second half of the same year, and then tender documents will be prepared in the fourth quarter. That sounds speedy. Can you set up an office and prepare tender documents at the same time so as to speed things up?
Thank you, Chairman. I thank Mr. Xu for his questions. On the pace, the current term government is result-oriented. We will move fast. We note the comment. Other members have made similar calls. Mr. Ivan Lee can comment on the other point. The $2.8 billion in funding, $2.4 billion will be for the procuring and installing the 2 pilot lines. For the I&D project on those pilot lines, the funding will come from the Innovation and Technology Fund. So the R&D projects will be funded by the ITF on the returns from the investment. We propose the MRDI to have a platform for collaboration between the government, academic, and industry. We want to have an industry change, so we don't set a simplistic figure for expected returns. But the MRDI will certainly help keep industries here and will contribute to Hong Kong's economy. One comment on top of what Mr. Ivan Lee has said. The MRDI will serve different purposes. It will support universities and industries. The MRDI will have its own research team and it will generate its own intellectual property, and that will bring income. There are smaller firms that do not have their own production lines, so they will count on the government platform for help to speed up R&D and production. Here, the MRDI can generate income, but the focus is on supporting firms, businesses. We have looked at the example of iMaker from Belgium and the success stories in Singapore and other overseas places. Our MRDI won't be the first in the world. There are success stories elsewhere in the world. We will learn from their successful experience. Thank you. If members have no other questions, then I put this question to you. This is a funding proposal. Is anyone against this funding proposal? If not, then we will wrap up the item. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I thank members. We now invite the officials to join us for the next item. Item 3, introduction of a patent box tax incentive in Hong Kong. We welcome the officials joining us. Undersecretary, whenever you are ready, please walk us through the proposal. Good afternoon, Chairman and members. We are here to brief members on the legislative proposal about a patent box tax incentive in Hong Kong. This is to give effect to a major policy under the policy address. For any knowledge-based economy, intellectual property is a key form of asset. Providing tax incentives for intellectual property can encourage industries, including the creative industries and IP users, to further create and use IP. This can also foster activities related to IP. In the mainland and other tax jurisdictions, they already have patent box tax incentives. The Financial Secretary proposed in this year's budget a patent box tax incentive. For IP assets and profits from such IP assets, there will be tax concessions. After the FS made the announcement, we started the preparations. So we started the work on amending CAP 112, that's the Inland Revenue Ordinance, in September this year. On the highlights of the patent box proposal and the level of concessionary rate, we conducted a 1-month trade consultation. We issued a consultation paper to the trade. The Commerce and Economic Development Bureau worked with the Inland Revenue Department, Intellectual Property Department, and the Agriculture, Fisheries, and Conservation Department, organized 2 engagement sessions on the 11th and the 2nd in September for the trade. Generally speaking, the trade welcomed our proposal. Most of the respondents hoped that we could take a more liberal approach in designing the tax arrangement. Some trade representatives expressed different views on certain arrangement details. We've looked at our existing concessionary tax rate. We also looked at the rate of other tax jurisdictions when it comes to patent box concessions. We've also taken into account the views we received. So after looking at the 3 sources of information, you can see that the chief executive announced in his policy address that for our tax box incentive, the concessionary rate will be set at 5%. We will go ahead to finalize the details for the patent box incentive. Our goal is to submit the amendment bill in the first half next year. I now invite Mr. Benjamin Chen from the Inland Revenue Department to walk us through the proposal. And then I will invite the Intellectual Property Department to tell us the highlights about the proposal. Thank you. Mr. Benjamin Chen. I now brief members on the design we have in mind for the patent box tax incentive. There's a key principle. We have to follow the tax standards set by the Organization for Economic and Cooperation and Development. Since 2016, we've been part of the OECD's BEPS. We have been part of this framework, inclusive framework on base erosion and profit shifting. So we have to follow the action plan from the OECD on BEPS. This means we have to follow Action 5, which is on harmful tax practices. For IP-related tax concessions, there are requirements we have to meet. The action plan sets certain standards, and that's the nexus approach. As we design our patent box incentive, we have to follow the nexus approach. In other tax jurisdictions, the mainland, other European countries, and in Singapore, their IP-related tax concessions also follow the nexus approach. This means only eligible IP assets qualify for tax concessions. Eligible IP assets mean patent or IP similar to patent. That's why we call this the patent box, because it has to do with patents. Our patent box regime will cover 3 kinds of assets: patent, copyrighted software, and plant variety rights. We have looked at the experience of the UK and Singapore. Their tax concession systems cover these kinds of IPs. To let taxpayers benefit from our patent box system earlier, we propose that eligible IP assets should cover not just registered patents, but also assets that are subject to an application for patents. It doesn't matter whether the application is in Hong Kong or elsewhere. Still, we need a mechanism. If this application fails in the end, the tax concessions previously granted would be revoked. The taxpayer will have to pay by the standard profits tax rate. Now, on qualifying IP income, our patent box system takes a liberal approach. Use of the asset and then you get the income. So this means patent fees. Second, sale of eligible assets. You get profits from it and that counts. And then we also cover sale or this income from the sale or income from the service derived from the IP asset. The nexus ratio also requires that only the eligible expenditure on developing the eligible IP asset can qualify for the tax concessions, and that's what we mean by the nexus ratio. Eligible expenditure means this. This has to be R&D expenditure directly related to the development of the eligible IP asset, and that's what we mean by eligible expenditure. Now, on the R&D activities, again, we looked at Singapore's practice. So here we will take a jurisdictional approach. This means we take a liberal approach. The taxpayer can undertake the R&D. This R&D can happen locally or abroad. If the R&D is outsourced to an unrelated party, the R&D can happen in Hong Kong or abroad. But if the R&D is outsourced to a related party, then extra requirements apply. This party has to be Hong Kong's tax resident. The R&D has to happen in Hong Kong. So these are the requirements under the nexus approach. On the concession, as the Undersecretary just said, we set the rate at 5%. We have looked at our other tax concessions. Most of them are charged at half rate. That means 8.25%. But we're also mindful that other tax jurisdictions offer somewhere between 5% to 18.75%. Take Ireland, it's at 6.25%. Singapore offers varying rates. It depends on the investment in fixed assets and the number of local employees. So there are two rates, either 5% or 10%. For our tax box incentive scheme, we have to consider competitiveness and the industry's views. After looking at those views, we decide to set it at 5%. I now give the floor to my colleague from the IPD who will tell us about the registration. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me brief the panel on eligibility and the relevant requirements. As explained, we propose to include three categories in the patent box, such as patents, copyrighted software, as well as plant variety rights. For patents and plant variety rights, registration is necessary. For copyrighted software, no registration is necessary. For patents and plant variety rights, in order to be qualified for the tax concession, these patent or plant variety rights registered elsewhere should apply for a short-term patent or apply for an OGP. For plant variety right, likewise, the taxpayer should apply similarly for a plant variety right in Hong Kong. The objective is to encourage the I&T sector to leverage on the patent system in Hong Kong and the plant variety rights in Hong Kong to protect their IP assets. In vetting the applications, we can ensure that eligible IP assets such as patents and plant variety rights will be granted the relevant or the applications will be granted in Hong Kong. We've considered putting in place a transitional period for the sector. We propose taking a liberal approach so that a transitional period of sufficient length will be put in place for the sector to adapt to the latest arrangements and adjust their strategy accordingly. After the bill has been passed, within 24 months after implementation of the patent box tax incentive, for patent and plant variety right registered elsewhere, there is no need to apply afresh in Hong Kong. At the lapse of the 24 period, however, taxpayers will be required to follow the requirements as explained. That means for a non-Hong Kong patent, the taxpayer should file an application for a patent in Hong Kong, or similarly, for a non-Hong Kong plant variety right, to the taxpayer should make the similar application. We have 3 members waiting to speak: Dr. Johnny Ng, Professor William Wong, and Mr. Edmund Wong. I will give each member 4 minutes, questions and answers included. Please observe the time limit. Dr. Johnny Ng. Thank you, Chairman. I thank the administration for explaining the latest initiative that is called the Patent Box Tax Incentive. This can help develop Hong Kong into an international I&T center and a regional IP trading center. My first question is this: have you conducted any assessment as to what new economic activities will be generated upon implementation of the incentive? Can you make it easy for us to understand? Because I'd like to know more about the economic benefits to be brought by the tax incentive. Second question, according to the paper, a liberal approach will be taken in vetting applications apart from encouraging by providing tax concessions for qualifying profits sourced in Hong Kong and derived from IP assets. Now, it must be your policy to attract more companies elsewhere to come to Hong Kong. Are you going to publicize this tax incentive? The other question is whether there is any anti-abuse measures. How do you prevent enterprises from exploiting the tax loopholes in order to reap a benefit? 3 questions about the economic benefits to be brought by the patent box tax incentive. Now, let me give you some background information. IP trading is contributing an ever larger portion of economic growth in Hong Kong. For example, for expenditure on purchasing IP, the expenditure is tax deductible. In 2021-22, the figure stood at $1 billion, up by 60%. The other figure for reference is R&D expenditure. Likewise, tax deduction is available for R&D expenditure, and in 2021-22, the figure stood at $3.39 billion. That's 200% than the figure in 2016-17. Also about application for patents in 2021-22, the number of applications for 2 consecutive years exceeded 10,000. Comparing to the number of applications a decade ago, we registered a 50% growth. The other figure I'd like to share with you is about the export of IP-related services. In 2021-22, the figures recorded were 5.5 billion and 15.8 billion. Comparing to 2016-17, we registered 6 to 8% growth. The Intellectual Property Department recently conducted a survey. We looked at IP-intensive enterprises and considered their contribution to GDP growth. By IP-intensive, we mean that, say, for I&T enterprises, they earn an income from copyrights and IP, etc. So, as mentioned, for IP-intensive industries between 2019 and 2021, they accounted for 32.7% of total GDP in Hong Kong. Now, for employment size, 29.1% of our workforce. So, all in all, IP is making an ever larger contribution to our GDP. Now, the member asked about incentives to promote R&D activities in Hong Kong, especially commercializing R&D outcomes. For patent box, this is a tax incentive based on output, whereas for R&D expenditure is input based. That means tax deductions are available whether or not the R&D is successful or not. Patent box, on the other hand, is output-based. That depends on whether we can have related activities. And as mentioned, our target is to attract enterprises from around the world to base the R&D operations and commercialization operations in Hong Kong so as to create a bigger pie. And responding to the members' suggestions, after the passage of the bill, we will mount publicity. Invest Hong Kong, ETOs, Hong Kong TDC. Altogether, we have over 65 offices around the world covering 128 economies. We'll leverage on this network. We will tell these enterprises about the incentives to attract them to come. Professor William Wong. Under the Secretary, well, you talked about IP in a quite generic way. It covers a very wide scope. Now, I'm in the I&T sector. I'm concerned about patents. I understand that you're only qualified for tax breaks after you sell IP assets. What about bundled sale? On bundled sale of patents. What is the sales volume in total in Hong Kong? Because how will the patent box be effective if the sales volume is small. Like say in UK in 2021-22, in the year of assessment, 24% of companies applying for patent box tax incentive were large corporations. They accounted for 94% of all the tax deductions for companies. What about SMEs? They are eligible for R&D tax deductions, but more importantly, you need to give them an incentive on the sales end. Otherwise, they won't be able to benefit from it. Well, thank you, Professor Wong, for the questions. On IP, as the professor said, indeed it covers a wide scope, such as a patent, copyright, design, trademark, plant variety rights. Specifically on patent, for IP trading in particular, apart from sale and purchase, we also have licensing. There are different ways of transforming and commercializing IP assets to generate economic values. As the member must know, we have different activities such as the annual IP Asia Expo and other exhibitions. Through these activities, we help SMEs with holding exhibitions and showcasing their products. In fact, we've discussed with the Hong Kong TDC for the innovation and creative industries related exhibitions, such as exhibitions for films, etc. We can have some a similar IP set up to help with the commercialization of IP assets on the spot. Through these activities, we strive to help SMEs. And like the member said, apart from the patent box, we also provide tax deductions for R&D expenditure. Say for the first $2 million worth of R&D expenditure, there'll be a 300% tax deduction. And for the subsequent expenditure, up to 200% without ceiling. So many SMEs do benefit from this tax incentive. So be it input-based or output-based tax measure, we provide one-stop service or preferential treatment for up, mid, and downstream operations so as to be able to attract enterprises from around the world to set up presence in Hong Kong. Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I support this proposal. Be it the CEDB or the IRD, they have made a lot of efforts in drawing up this proposal, especially as explained by the administration. We need to abide by the OECD requirements. They've tried to take a more liberal approach, as we've seen in the consultation exercise. The preferential tax rate is 5%, so that's on the low side comparing to the normal tax rate of 16.5%. Are there avoidance provisions to be included to avoid capitalization of the assets in order to reap a benefit from the tax patent box tax incentive so that these abusers could pay less tax?
On guarding against abuse, there are several things the IRD works on. First, the patent box regime. It has to follow the nexus approach of the OECD. There are stringent standards to follow. Only eligible expenditure qualifies. Only eligible patents qualify. There are stringent rules. In the bill, we will specify these requirements. for a taxpayer to benefit under the patent box. There is a record-keeping requirement that the taxpayer will have to meet. This is distinct from the requirement for regular taxes. For each intellectual property, there is income generated, there is expenditure involved on developing the IP. The taxpayer has to keep all the records. So, as we work on tax assessment, we will require the taxpayer to provide the information. After the tax assessment, we will do spot checks. That means we ask certain taxpayers to give us the information to ensure the taxpayers meet all these requirements before we grant the tax concession. The statutory requirements will also include anti-avoidance or clauses to guard against abuse. Now, there are requirements on set-off for losses. The OECD's rules say that if there are tax concessions for profit, then the losses that follow afterwards cannot be used to set off against the regular revenue. We will put this kind of specific provisions to guard against abuse into our proposal for the patent box regime. Follow-up questions? Yes. Just then, the IRD said there would be spot checks. So does it mean that every year the companies apply for the patent box, you check a certain percentage of the firms? Or is it about assess first but audit later? And then when you do a desktop audit, and then you ask the firm for the records. Is that how it works? Mr. Wong is very familiar with how it works. For the taxpayer, the applicant applies for the patent box regime. They have to fill out a form where they have to provide information. We do random checks. And second, for certain taxpayers, we look for high-risk elements. When we see them, we do spot checks for a review. So 2 things we're doing. Mr. Peter Xu. Thank you, Chairman. I support rolling out a patent box regime. The patent box can foster development in copyright and patents that will be good for our economy. We set the concessionary rate at 5%. 5% will make us attractive when I look at the rate at other places. The patent box can encourage local development of patent and copyrighted software and plant variety species. But what about attracting overseas players? How can we promote our patent box to overseas players? Undersecretary. I thank Mr. Xu for his question. As I said, we will work on publicity. We have a good patent box system. We will work through our economic and trade offices, Invest Hong Kong, and Trade Development Council. We will promote this patent box regime to overseas economies. This will give us more things to sell as we try to attract firms. In the first 11 months this year, Invest Hong Kong has attracted 351 firms to Hong Kong. Many are in innovation and technology. Many are involved in intellectual property. So more incentives on our part, say tax deductions for IP, will help us attract more firms in IP to Hong Kong. Promoting through the mainland offices of the HKSL government. Here's something I have in mind. In Hong Kong, Hong Kong has many industries. The bosses have ideas. They wonder, or rather, they have little information on the subsidies and allowances available. Dr. Bernard Chen, I know you visit business chambers. Please tell businesses about the allowances available. The ETOs can go further in promoting our incentives. For Hong Kong's local firms, the IPD shares information about MP management and IP trading with the sector. Say, for example, we have the IP manager scheme. More than 1,000 SMEs have joined the scheme. Starting from 2014, 7,000 or so practitioners have been able to take part in the training. That is the IP manager training. The training lets the practitioners realize the economic value of IP. So this comes back to my point about transforming and commercializing IP. We also provide free advisory service. We work with the Law Society of Hong Kong. We have a free advisory service. It's one-on-one. It started in 2015 or 16. There were free 30-minute sessions. Starting from January this year, we offer 45-minute advisory sessions for free. 650 cases have opted for the free advisory. We will continue to work through the IPD to share the perks available with the industry. Professor William Wong speaking for the second round. Intellectual property is a broad term, and then it's lumped together with scientific research. I have reservations about this approach. Patents will take more than a few road shows. You need to talk to the people involved to move the needle. The Undersecretary gave us a positive explanation. There is already tax deductions to encourage scientific research, but the outcome is there. The outcome isn't going anywhere. The patent is there to encourage the sale of outcomes. But our observation is that it's the large players that can benefit the most because they can sell their outcomes. But these SMEs, especially startups, struggle with selling. They cannot benefit. So for patent, how can we help our tech startups so that they can benefit from the tax concessions under the patent box regime? I agree with boosting sales with the patent box, but how can we reach out to our SMEs and startups with the patent box? This is where the government needs to do more. Undersecretary. The IPD runs the IP Manager scheme featuring one-on-one advisory services. That program targets SMEs. The 1,000 to 2,000 cases we worked on involve SMEs. We will look into ways to do better on our platform. Now, for first-time IP applications, the ITC offers funding $250,000, so that would be a major boost for SMEs. We also work with the Trade Development Council. There's the Asia IP Exchange. It's an information platform. There are patents and other IP assets on the platform. This is a form of online collaboration to help move things forward at the mid and downstreams. Coming up, we have many expos that will see many small and medium enterprises. With these expos, we want to help our SMEs commercialize their project. We will continue to consult the trade and Professor Wong as we seek to do better. If members have no other questions, the government will amend the Inland Revenue Ordinance to give effect to the patent box regime. The goal is to submit a legislative proposal in the first half of next year. Do members support this legislative proposal? If there are no objections, then let's wrap up this item. Thank you. Item 4, any other business? This is the last meeting of this panel in this legislative session. I want to take this opportunity to thank members for supporting the work of this panel. I thank the administration for attending this panel's meetings and discussing various items with members. If there are no other business, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.